Hello everyone, my name is Suzanne Stafford and this is my multimedia presentation. I was the only practicing teacher in my group, so we all used my data. I'm a high school biology teacher in Howard County, Maryland, and we focused on my advanced placement biology class, which is almost entirely 11th and 12th graders, ages approximately 16 to 18. I actually have one 10th grader this year. The data that we started this whole process on was actually the 2017 AP Biology scores, or my students from last year's AP Biology scores. College Board provides a breakdown of the data where they compare your students to all the students who took the exam globally. Last year, there were over 210,000 students who took the AP Biology exam. So you can see overall score distributions of my groups versus everyone who took it, how they did on multiple choice, how they did on free response, and then the really good data is it shows a breakdown by topic of how the students did on the multiple choice section, and then a breakdown of each individual free response by topic and how they did on those. My group looked at all of this data and we used the Notice and Wonder protocol, which was our favorite personally, to ask a bunch of questions after making a bunch of statements. And we were able to identify some questions we wanted more research on. What I was able to do to supply more data to answer these questions was to get the transcripts of all of my students in AP Biology this year, and we were able to connect some of those questions with their transcripts to learning and instructional gaps. For instance, across a large group of students, we noticed that success in math classes or their grades in math classes correlated closely with their grades in science classes. We noticed that there wasn't a lot of cross-curricular communication and planning at my school, that was going to affect large groups in terms of instructional gaps. We noticed students who were successful in their math and English classes tended to be successful across the board. We specifically noticed, even though it only affected a small group, that students who took low-level Biology 1 before taking AP Bio had significant learning and instructional gaps. Based on limitations in terms of data and time, my group set our SMART target learning goal on that small group of students who had taken low-level Biology 1. So given 1 month of supplemental biology instructions, students who are currently in AP Biology but took low-level Biology 1 will score higher on their next unit exam. This was actually modified a few weeks in because originally this read that students will score at least a 3 on their next unit exam, which is equivalent to a 3. However, upon pulling the data and finding out which of my students actually took low-level Biology 1, their baseline test averages for some of them were so low that a C was actually a huge, huge goal for them. So it got modified to be that they would just perform better than they have previously with supplemental biology instruction. This is going to be assessed by their grade on their Unit 6 exam, which is the last exam of the year. And what we did next was try and come up with a plan as a group as to how their instruction was going to be supplemented. So my group started by going to Digo and finding a variety of strategies that might help. One would be using jigsaw technique when I'm lesson planning to see if I could break the students down by need in the class. The next was we looked at some strategies for how to engage underperforming students. This is tricky because while the students are underperforming in AP Bio, a lot of it is because they have significant learning and instructional gaps. The last one, and this was really helpful, is it was some techniques as to how to make sure I could help the underperforming students, but while not holding back the true AP gifted and talented students that were also in my class. We took all of this information and I came up with a list of instructional strategies and activities that I was going to use to supplement the learning of my students. One is Albert.io, which is a website my school purchased that actually helps students review for all AP exams, not just AP Biology, using Kaplan AP Biology review books, which my library has. Using more of the textbook Mastering Biology area, this is a wonderful website that correlates with the AP Biology textbook, but also the GT Biology textbook, which my students did not have access to because they didn't take GT Biology 1. It has flashcards, animations, quizzes, homework, a lot of really good resources. I myself leading review sessions during our Viking time, which is a 30-minute flex period that my school has every Wednesday. And then lastly, providing the students with review packets from the GT ninth grade biology class that shows the students what they should have known going into a unit if they had taken the class that would have prepared them for AP biology. So then we did track all of this on an action plan tracking sheet to make sure everything was ready to go. We knew what we were aiming for in terms of completion dates and frequency. There's actually some extra things on this action plan tracking sheet that we had originally were going to implement, like Bozeman Science, but then due to time limitations, because we actually had significant snow days, that did not happen. Our evaluation is this grade on the Unit 6 exam, somewhere between the first and second week of April. It ended up being given the very end of the last week of April because of snow days again. So throughout, I pulled artifacts from the students so I could see how things were going and modify as need be. The first artifact was actually for a baseline. It was pulling the students' average test and quiz scores on units 1 through 5 so I could see if they improved or not at the end. I also pulled some data from Albert. Albert, why it's nice is because it lets the teacher see how many questions the students completed, how much time they spent, their accuracy, and then I really like this section. It lets us see their best 3 topics and also their toughest 3 topics. So that can help me continue to modify where students need additional information as they go. So finally, we come to the evaluation metrics. So there were 3 students who took low-level biology 1 that I teach this year. Zaria got a 68.33 on her Unit 6 exam, and she had averaged a 58.23 before that, so that is a significant improvement. Jenny and Sanjit, however, both scored lower than their test average for units 1 through 5. Now, Jenny did not score much lower, so there's possibility if standard deviation was brought into case that basically Jenny did about the same. No improvement, but she didn't really go down when we look at it across the board. Sanjit, however, went down by 13%, which is significant, so he did much worse than he has been averaging on this Unit 6 exam. To take some of this information into account, I went through and I tracked how many of the additional supplements did each student actually use. Zaria used basically all of them. Jenny used some. Sanjit did not take advantage of a single additional item meant to help him be successful in the class. Something else to note, all 3 students are seniors and they have already all committed to their colleges for next year. So to wrap this up, a third of the students were able to achieve the SMART learning goal and 2/3 did not. It basically appears that the supplemental instruction does actually help because students who took advantage of it were able to significantly improve their test score. And if this was done all year and not just before the final exam, I could see test scores improving more and more as the year went on. However, I can't really force students at the high school level to take advantage of supplemental materials. And students that did not take advantage actually either did worse or made no improvement on their exam grades. Overall, I learned a lot of things from this process. I think a goal of mine is that I'm very organized and I was able or a positive of mine is that I'm very organized and I was able to easily bring all of this data together to show my team. And that was a strength of mine throughout this process. Something I'm still working on is to really have a growth mindset. And it's been great working with other people who can really look at the data from another angle and give me some suggestions that maybe hadn't thought of. I'm still working on taking those suggestions to heart and, not seeing them as a failure or an attack on me, but just something else that could be done so my students can be more successful. This process, I believe, was very successful overall, and I have a lot more ideas for how I want to go into my AP class next year and how I want to track the data in ways I haven't before throughout the entire school year so that all of my students can be successful. Thank you.